Hey guys, welcome to another video from the Parrott Bros. Now today we're going to be doing a video all about the V6. I've had it a few months now and I thought it was about time I checked in and told you guys how I feel about it. Now of course I love the V6 but I'm not loving the auto box and I'll tell you more why after the intro. So I've been driving this for over 3 months now and for the most part I absolutely love it, but there's a few issues I've found with the auto box and I just can't seem to get round them. And it's, let me just get going, so I've got a Porsche on my arse. One of them is what gear it's in at the right time, because half the time it's always in the wrong gear, and I haven't quite sussed out the auto box. Now it's different to my S4 because obviously this is a slightly earlier box, and you can tell it's, don't get me wrong, I am loving it. I'm loving the V6. Would I have bought an auto? Probably not, knowing what I know now. And a few of the reasons is, so when you're in normal drive, it's fine. It's a bit slow to react. It's a bit jerky on gear changes. There's nothing wrong with the box. The box is fine. But it's just an older, less responsive box compared to the new stuff. Now, For cruising, it's absolutely fine. I mean, sitting on the motorway, and especially if you've got cruise as well, ideal. But it's just, when you want to drive it a bit hard and a bit fast, I knock it into manual. Now, which is fine, you can use the paddles. Now, a couple of times I've come a bit stuck with, or a bit unstuck with issues, because basically it changes down, but it doesn't always change down enough. So you'll be driving and like you can knock it down a couple and pin off and it'll go up the gears, and then you'll slow down a bit and you'll go to bury it thinking, oh yeah, it's an auto, it's going to do a drop down, when it's not, because you're in manual. So then you have to try and paddle down and find the gear you want, and it just, I don't know, I expected a bit more from it. I'm not really sure why, because I kind of knew that it was a early 2000 gearbox and it wasn't going to be, it was one of the very first ESG style boxes, so I should have known better. But don't get me wrong, I'm not selling it. So before anyone says, oh, you're going to sell it, no, I'm not selling it. I'm keeping the car. The other thing I wanted to discuss was the whole, the mindset of a mechatronic's fault. Because if you're a DSG or an auto owner, you will probably at some point in your mind have thought, what happens if the mechatronics fails? And you sort of, you'll be driving along and maybe you'll come to a stop and it will just clonk into first gear a bit and you think, oh, it hasn't done that before, or it hasn't done that for a while, or is that a mechatronics issue? Because to get the box fixed, I mean, you may have to take the box out to get it fixed, which could be really expensive. You may have to get a new box. To get the mechatronics unit fixed, I think is over £1,000 on its own. So that alone is a big expense, especially when these are only sort of 4 or 5 grand cars. You're talking 20-25% of the value of the car, and that's without any time for, say, a mechanic to take it in and out. And that does play on your mind a little bit. I know it shouldn't, but like anything, if you buy a V6, I guess you'll be conscious of the chains and all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd mention it because it is definitely one of those things. It does play on my mind from time to time. I don't really care that much because I've got other TTs, but I don't at the same time want to invest a load into this. Now, I'm in drive and I need to overtake someone, so I can just do a kickdown, and it's arguably very quick on the kickdowns, which is good, and it picks up quite well. But you have to literally bury your foot to the floor, which I guess is fine if you know in a scenario where you're coming up behind a car and you just want to go nailing off, absolutely fine. But sometimes when you're driving around town and you just want to quickly pull out around someone but don't want to do it at 100 mile an hour because you're in a 30 mile an hour road, it doesn't always put you in the right position. And it's just, I don't know, having come from, well, having loads of manual TTs, I absolutely love giving the blue one and the silver one a good drive, you know what I mean? Like really punching it through the gears, having a lovely time. And this, I just don't get that from this. Yeah, I can drive it a little bit harder. It doesn't help that the V6 is quite front heavy. and you notice that, I'm going to be swapping out the front arms and putting in some caster correction bushes and some poly bushes, and I may put coilovers on this because it's got lowered springs which are a little bit too low arguably, and it just bangs a little bit. It's on standard shocks, which don't, if you're going to lower a car, don't put lowering springs on standard shocks. I've just accepted it because it was on the car. I wanted to do a few thousand miles in it, enjoy it, and then worry about what the problem, like what I wanted to do and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm kind of at that point where I want to do some suspension. I've got some coilovers sat in the garage, of course, because I have lots of TT, so I need lots of spares. So I'm going to be putting coilovers on. I'll put some polybush top mounts on, and I'm going to put, like I said, the front wishbones. I'm going to change the bushes for some slightly better ones, probably some power flexes, just to try and give the front a little bit better handling. Yeah, it might make the ride a little bit harsher, but to be honest, with the lowering springs, it's not very nice anyway. So that aside, hopefully that'll dial in the front end a little bit. I don't expect too much because the engine is heavier, so I am kind of fighting a downhill battle with that one, but hopefully it helps. But it's just not as nimble. Am I going to be looking for a manual V6 in the future? Maybe. I might try and drive one. Maybe I should do a video on driving one and a comparison between the manual and the auto of the SG, just to see whether or not it makes that much of a difference. Because if it does, at least then I know maybe I do want a manual after all. And if it does still drive like a big heavy V6, then maybe I'll just stick with this and we'll cruise it. Like I said, this isn't for sale. I'm going to be doing a load of bits to it, but it's a nice one, and I don't want to go too mad because I like keeping everything sort of OEM and whatnot. But actually, as a car, it's really good. I haven't had any major things to complain about. The fuel economy isn't actually too bad. I mean, oh, that's cruise. What are we getting now? Over 30 miles to the gallon, so I'm happy with that. I need to book my ferry tickets to actually taking this to the ring, the Nürburgring in July. So if you are in Germany and you want to come and say hello, or you fancy a last minute trip to the ring, we are going from 15th to the 19th of July, staying in Adenau. Should be a good trip. Hopefully the weather's good. I've not been in July before, so hopefully the weather will be a bit better than the last time I went, because it snowed, which track days and snow don't really combine, as you can imagine. But yeah, so this will be getting ready. Hopefully I've ordered all the suspension bolts, because when you change the rear shocks, the lower bolts are a one use, so you need to swap them out. Fronts, I've already changed the bolts when I put the new subframe on this before I went and bought it. It's only 3 months old, and you can do that without dropping the subframe, so I will just get them swapped over. The arms and bushes have been ordered, so hopefully I should get them on in the next couple of weeks, which will give me a couple of weeks to be able to enjoy this prior to going to the ring, so that'd be cool. But yeah, I mean, let me know your thoughts, because obviously you guys are great for letting me know your woes, the pros, the cons, how you feel. And I want to know, for those who've got a DSG, those who have got a manual, how are they? You know what I mean? If you've had other TTs, or quite a few of you have got more than one, like me, let me know how they compare. I'd love to know if anyone's got both a DSG and a manual V6. I want to know how it fares, because I want to know if it is that big a difference. Or if you've got a 3.2 but used to have a 1.8, or vice versa. Because I'd love a debate down in the comments about whether I'm just being silly, or I expect too much from a 20-year-old car. The other thing that I have considered is getting the gearbox mapped. Now that may help with clamping force, so it may help with things like the torque in which it uses to change the gears, at what point, how long it holds the gears for, clamping force, yeah, like I said, at what point it changes gears, how it reacts in sport, how it reacts in normal drive, maybe a bit less clunky. I might also do a gearbox service. It has had one less than 40,000 miles ago, but while I'm here, I may as well have a quick swap out as well, just see if that makes any difference. it shouldn't, and it's got quite a good service history, so I'm not doubting that at all, but it's definitely worth considering. So that's kind of where I am with the V6. Absolutely loving it. I mean, sound wise, I don't know how well you'll hear this, but let me slow down a bit and I'll give it a bit of a kick down, because it's quite a well insulated cabin. Even though it's really loud outside, it's actually quite quiet in here. I'll tell you what, there's a pull-in coming in, so I'll pull in and I'll let some road clear, because I'm already doing a healthy speed. So obviously I want to abide by the laws of the road, of course. Plus this road is normally littered with police with speed guns, so you've got to be safe in here. Plus, to be honest, it sounds better from 0 up. Plus I can open the windows because I'm sweating. The aircon has decided to stop working, much to my enjoyment, so yeah, I need to sort that out as well. Add that to the list of problems with all the cars. So we'll knock it, when I get to a stop, I'll knock it into nothing. Wait for a clear gap, which should come up soon. Oh, fresh air. Woo! So the aircon has been gassed and it worked, but I think there's something wrong with one of the switches, because basically it doesn't always work, and I can't always get it to work on the button, which is horrifically annoying. So knock it into manual, and hopefully I'll find a gap. Unfortunately, when I pull over now, is the busiest time on this road. There wasn't a single car before. Now there is absolutely loads coming, and hopefully there'll be a gap coming up. Now this is the best sounding car I've had by a long shot. There's no debate about that at all. Flipping heck, come on. Right, oh, Mark 2. I'm gonna have to try one of them. I am. Right, we got a gap coming up finally. So this is probably my most favourite, is driving it from a standstill in auto. Why is this person slowed down? Come on, Mr. Kia. Right. I mean, it picks up the gears well. I mean, that was 70 in no time. The torque is lovely. It's quite a weird drive because, well, I haven't driven an Auto 225 because they don't do one, and it's a weird pickup in these because it's not got a turbo. You're expecting that sort of punch, whereas this just is really linear all the way up. It's quite a nice torque, and it's quite enjoyable for the driving experience, but it just doesn't have that punch. And I guess with a manual, you'll be able to sort of, it'll be a bit more jerky through the gears. Maybe that's why it feels faster, because you're going through the gears and you get that sort of, as you've let off and you put back on, you get that torque again. But from that perspective, it's absolutely fine. Like I said, the only issues I have is in drive, it can be a bit lazy when you're around town. It changes up to the highest possible gear at the lowest possible speed, which is really annoying. So you find that it drops down all the time. In sport, I forgot to tell you about sport. So in sport, flipping heck, that literally wants to hold it to like 5,000 RPM all the time, which is horrific. So it sounds lovely, but it also sounds like you're strangling the crap out of it all the time. I'm coming up to the end of the road in a minute, so I'll show you, but it feels like it's holding the gears for too long. So drive is too lazy. Sport, it holds the gears too much, so you're always in the lowest gear when it literally, it's like it holds it to red line. Even when you're sort of just cruising at say 50, it will hold it like third, screaming the life out of it. And then in manual mode, it doesn't drop down gears quick enough. So you'll slow down a bit. Let me try it now, and I'll see what it does. Because basically, unless you come to a stop and then it puts you in first, which is where you want to be, you'll be doing. I'm doing 70 in 6th at the moment. I'm going to come down to a reasonable slowdown. Hopefully it won't stop, and you'll be able to see. So I'll tell you the speeds as it changes down. So it hasn't changed down at all yet. I'm in 5th doing 25, which is ridiculous. So now look, you pin it, I'm flat out in 5th at 30 mile an hour. So it hasn't changed down enough. Sorry I lost you there. The GoPro decided to overheat because it was one of those rare occasions when it's warm outside and the sun was beaming on it through the window. But yeah, so as I was saying, basically when you're in manual mode and you come down to a slow speed but not a stop, it doesn't put you in a low enough gear, so then you have to start paddling down when you're in manual mode, but at the same time you are semi-reliant on the fact that it drops down the gears, but it doesn't actually drop all the way down. So it's just a bit of a faff, but it does sound really good in manual mode. Plus you get to put it where you want it to be, so that is a benefit. Now I also said I would talk to you about sport mode. Now sport mode is a little bit ridiculous. Now I'm doing, what gear are we in? So we're in 5th gear at 30 miles an hour. Now if I drop it into sport mode, I'm guessing it'll probably go to about 2nd, which is semi-ridiculous. It's just, oh, it's not too bad actually. At 30 it sits at 3 and a bit thousand RPM. So I guess if you're on a track day or hammering about, maybe sport mode is a better option because it's more likely to be in a low enough gear, whereas drive it won't, then you have to do a kick down. Manual, if you're paddling up and down and you're watching it paddling up and down, the only issue is it might not change down quick enough and it's a bit when you're doing it. Let's do a bit of driving in sport. So I mean, if you go to say 40, it stays in 2nd at like 4,500 RPM, so it's like, it's just not nice. It serves a purpose. I get that it serves a purpose, but it does, for day-to-day driving, it's like you're screaming the absolute crap out of it. We'll see what it's like when we slow down. I'm assuming it will change down and be high in the low rev range of the lower gear, but I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Okay, it still changes up, but it holds gears 4,000, 5,000 RPM, which is right, but there you go, see, drops down, it's doing like 35 at 4,000. It's high. It does do a nice down change though, I think. Or does it not? No, it doesn't. So, there's no perfect gear, but to be honest, I'm not surprised. It's a 20-plus-year-old gearbox. It's good, but it's not great. But then if you want it great, you just buy a newer TT. You are buying a 20-something-year-old car. So, whilst I love the 3.2, I'm not a massive fan of the gearbox, just because I haven't found where I want to be in it. I haven't sort of got it sussed as such. Yes, I probably will do a comparison video if I can find someone who wants to maybe come meet, and we'll do a video with the manual and the DSG, have a bit of a comparison and see what the difference is, and see kind of how the manual handles, because that's what I think will make it or break it for me. If it handles the same as this, but it's a manual gearbox, I'll probably just stick with this, because to be honest, having at least one auto in the fleet is nice, because if you're going somewhere on a long trip like the Nürburgring, admittedly going around the Nürburgring in a manual would be better, but the 350 miles each way would be nicer in a DSG auto. So I might get the box mapped. What have you done? I mean, there must be people out there who've had these for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years. Any better, or do you just kind of learn to live with it? Or do you get another option is getting a electronic throttle response unit, like one of those ones where you can change how responsive the throttle is, because it's fly-by-wire. So does that make it better? That's another option. But yeah, so I'm loving the V6. Still on the fence about the gearbox, although it's nice for cruising. I just haven't quite found my way with it just yet. But yeah, any help would be great, guys. Feel free to jump down into the comments with that. Always welcomed. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.